Howdy! In this mini lecture, we will discuss food production feedlot agriculture. The student learning objectives of this mini lecture are: explain the challenges of feeding a growing human population and assess how we raise animals for food. What should be glaring obvious by now is that the human population is rapidly growing, and questions remain as to how we can feed everyone. One thing we do know for certain, though, is that we cannot continue on the path we are on in terms of food production and population management if we hope to live sustainably on this planet. So the question remains, how do we move towards sustainability in terms of agriculture and food production? The next few slides will explore the facets of this question. Currently, food production exceeds population, and the production of most foods has risen since the 1960s, meaning we're producing more food per person each year. Despite this positive growth, there is still global hunger. There are approximately 870 million people worldwide who do not have enough to eat and consequently suffering from undernutrition or receiving fewer calories than the body requires. Malnutrition, or shortage of nutrients, vitamins, and minerals the body needs is also a global problem. Economic barriers are one of the main reasons people suffer from undernutrition or malnutrition. 1/5 of the global population lives on less than $1 per day, and over half live on less than $2 per day. Other contributing factors to the global hunger crisis are politics, wars, and distribution inefficiencies. As we think about the future of food, we need to remember that the UN estimates we will have approximately 9 billion people to feed by 2050. Furthermore, 99% of the population growth will occur in developing countries. How will the world handle this growth and need for food? Let's consider some global food production projections as we consider this wicked problem. This graph shows the observed area-weighted global yield in maize, wheat, rice, and soybean from 1961 to 2008. The closed circles illustrate production to date, and the dashed lines with highlighting illustrate projections to 2050. The width of the shading illustrates the confidence interval, or how certain we can be that the data is correct for the projection. Combining the information from this graph with global population projections, ultimately this graph shows that crop yields worldwide are not increasing fast enough to keep pace with the predicted global population growth, and come 2050 we will not have enough grain to feed the estimated 9 billion people on the planet. Let's consider meat production as well. Per person, production of meat derived from cattle, pork, chicken, and fish has risen steadily worldwide since the 1960s. Specifically, global meat production has increased fivefold since 1950. This is because as wealth and global trade has increased, so too have individuals' appetites for meat, milk, eggs, and other animal products. United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that as developing nations go through the demographic transition and reach the industrial stage of development, total meat consumption worldwide will double again by 2050. Simply put, when people make more money, they eat more animal products. But is this model of growth sustainable? Beyond just having the capacity to feed everyone, let's consider the ecological impacts of raising animals for human consumption. If animals are allowed to overgraze a field, this can have drastic detrimental ecological effects. For example, if the vegetation is removed from a field, this will leave topsoil bare and expose it to wind and water erosion. Additionally, too many grazing animals on too small of a piece of land can cause the soil structure to be compacted, which decrease aeration and infiltration, both of which ultimately inhibit the growth and survival of new grass. In traditional agriculture, livestock were kept on a small scale and with the families that were raising them. These livestock often grazed open grasslands in herds. While some livestock are still raised this way, the vast majority of animal products come from animals raised in feedlots, known as factory farms or concentrated animal feeding operations. These factories house thousands of animals at a time at high densities. The high animal-to-land ratio make these operations economically efficient and produce more food at lower prices, but it comes at a cost to the environment and the animals. The high density of animals means disease spread easily and rapidly through the population, so these animals are treated liberally with antibiotics. Very oftentimes, animals at these facilities do not have space to roam or engage in their normal behaviors. The advantages of producing meat this way is that more meat can be produced at a lower price, which makes meat more affordable to more people. Also, by raising animals in confined areas, there are less grazing impacts on the land because animals are usually not grazing at all. They are provided a feed mixture, which usually is largely made of corn products. This is not the normal diet of cattle, but it is more economically efficient when producing meat. The downsides of producing meat this way is that nearly 45% of livestock are fed grain, which could have gone to feeding people. Furthermore, these massive farms produce equally massive amounts of manure and urine, which can pollute surface water and groundwater when it is washed off the farm or beneath topsoil. As was mentioned before, disease outbreaks are common in these facilities. Finally, raising animals for food also results in air pollution. If you've ever driven past or lived near a feedlot, you know the offensive odor that emanates from these facilities. However, you may not realize that the livestock are also a major source of greenhouse gases, which contribute to climate change. A UN report estimated that livestock agriculture contributes 9% of CO2 emissions, 37% of methane emissions, and 65% of nitrous oxide emissions. Altogether, 18% of the emissions that cause climate change come from feedlots. You may not realize this, but when you make decisions about what you eat, you are making decisions about how you choose to consume energy. One of the biggest impacts you can make on your ecological footprint is to modify your food choices. For example, as was mentioned before, we currently feed 45% of our grain to cattle. Think of how many people this could feed. For reference, 44 pounds of feed are required to produce 2.2 pounds of beef. Of all the animal products, milk requires the least feed inputs. Beyond just feed, animal products require land and water. By and large, beef is the most costly in terms of water and land to produce. That concludes this mini lecture on food production and the challenges we face as we try to feed an ever-growing population. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks and gig 'em!